Turn left on Bank Street. In 1 mile, turn left on State Route 39.
A bipolar schizophrenic, and it would have not been good for him or my family if people had said to him, Nate, you're right, the radio is talking to you. Nate, you're right, the curtains are talking to you. He went, they put him in a mental hospital, they gave him lithium, and then he was better, and he could actually live a normal, relatively happy life. There's no good treatment for gender identity.
In half a mile, turn left.
Disorder, gender dysphoria, whatever you want to call it, but to suggest that it is a condition that doesn't require treatment, that really it's just that you're actually brain female. Again, this is ascientific. There's no scientific evidence to back this whatsoever. Even these studies that have been done talking about there's a female brain and a male brain. First of all, if you say this to a feminist, you're a sexist. Right? Right? If you say to a feminist, there's a female brain and a male brain, and the male brain works differently than the female brain, the feminist will look at you like, how dare you?
Well, it's also one of the rare times where you're allowed to celebrate classic definitions of female beauty.
Turn left on State Route 39.
When a man embraces him when he becomes a woman. Lipstick, high heels, short skirt. This is like not sexist.
Caitlyn Jenner was only a woman when Caitlyn Jenner was on the cover of Vanity Fair and a bustier.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
But if he had just said, listen, I look exactly the same as I did yesterday.
In 700 feet, turn right on State Route 124.
Yeah, if he got a short haircut and dressed like Billie Jean King.
Right. It's the reason why the media loves Laverne Cox, because Laverne Cox.
Turn right on State Route 124. In 1.2 miles, turn left to US 6 East, Provincetown.
Surgeries and looks a lot like a woman. So
I don't know who Laverne Cox is.
The guy from, the transgender woman from Orange is the New Black.
I never watched that show.
I've never watched that show either, but she's on the cover of Time magazine.
Oh.
Or he's on the cover of Time magazine.
Well, there was the woman in that show. Isn't that the one where the girl, Ruby, is that the girl?
That's Laverne Cox.
Okay. That's a woman or man?
That's a man.
It used to be a man.
It used to be a man.
It's a woman now. Very tricky.
No, still a man, but
transgender. I'm so out of the loop. I'm that old man.
Well, look at that headline there, right? It says America's next civil rights frontier, and that's the key. You have a bunch of people in the United States who are suggesting that they want the next civil rights fight. Always the next civil rights fight, right?
Yeah.
So the civil rights fight is immigration, or the civil rights fight is gay marriage, or the civil rights fight is transgenders. Okay, how about this? How about there was only one real civil rights fight, and it was about black people who had been historically oppressed in the United States for 200 years.
There had been slaves.
Yes, who had been slaves, and then Jim
Jim
Crow.
Transgenders.
This is correct.
Yeah.
Okay, the worst that Caitlyn Jenner had experienced was being incredibly wealthy in a high net worth suburb. This is not to say that transgender people aren't discriminated against in some areas of American life. I'm sure that's true, but it's also like behavior is not the same as being born black or being born Asian or being born with disabled. Like if I'm a business owner and I hire you and you're a man and you come in the next day and you're dressed in a woman's clothing saying you're a woman but you still have a full beard. Like, I don't see why I, as a business owner, am expected to eat the cost of that. Like, that seems bizarre to me.
Eat the cost is a great way to phrase it. I didn't have a dog in this fight. I didn't.
In 1,000 feet, turn left.
I was completely open and liberal about it until there was a case where a man who had been a man for 30 years became a woman for a little less than 2 years and then started MMA fighting women.
Yes, exactly.
Beating the fuck out of these women and not proclaiming that he or she used to be a man because in quotes, it was a medical condition that I did not need to disclose. Like, that's not a fucking medical condition.
Right.
And if you ever watch the fights, She
like
wasn't
is this
winning.
Fallon Fox?
Yes.
Yeah.
She wasn't winning because she was skillful. She was fucking manhandling these women. It was ugly.
Of course.
It was
of course.
horrible.
Like this is, but again, it's so funny how the transgender movement destroys the feminist movement by
Right.
living off of the sort of lies that the feminist movement promulgated. So the feminist movement said stupid things like women and men equally athletic proficient.
Well, that's
And
something
that's
that
not
has
true.
been repeated very recently, that there's no biological.
Turn left to US 6 East, Provincetown.
different. Genders.
I wake up in the morning.
Continue straight for 10 minutes to US 6 East, Eastham, Provincetown.
It's all social.
Absolute horseshit. I mean, I'm
Total
just sorry.
horseshit.
There's no scientific evidence to back that, and it's particularly true with regard to actual physical capacity. This is just nonsense.
Not just no scientific evidence, but a
counter.
mountain. Yeah.
I mean,
mountain of it.
My
against
favorite
it.
study on this is, you know, remember there was those commercials about like throwing like a girl, running like a girl.
Right.
Remember those feminist commercials saying, what is it to be running like a girl? And they would show an adult woman and she'd be running all girly, and then they would show a little girl and she's running, and it's still a little girly, but she's running, you know, like normally. Like
Fierce.
it's only exactly fierce. It's only society that has forced the little girl to run like a woman. First of all, I have a 3-year-old girl. She runs like a girl. Second of all, and it's not because I'm teaching her. It's not because her mom runs, because she doesn't, right? But
Does she play with dolls because you're a sexist pig?
it's because of that. My daughter started off liking trucks like in the first year, and I give a shit. And now she likes playing with dolls and dressing up in princess dresses. Like, who cares? She's a girl. She's always been a girl. She'll always be a girl, whether she likes trucks or whether she likes
Yeah,
dresses.
that was an issue with one of my daughters too. My daughter was a little worried about it. I go, she's gonna be a dyke. She's like, no. I go, what's the big deal? You like lesbians? Who cares? I don't care. I'm like, I do not care. And she's like, and then she turned to the corner, and then she got, but we just let her be whatever she's in. But she was really into like Batman for a while.
Yeah, my daughter is into Batman, and then she was into Wonder Woman. Like, who cares? But
Yeah.
but what's funny about this is that the left kept saying, even when I met my wife, right, who's a conservative, and I made her more conservative when we got married, because that's what men tend to do to their wives. But she you know, I remember early on we had a conversation about this, and I said, women don't throw like men. And she got like all offended, and I said, but that's factually true. She said, right, but it's insulting. It's like, no, that's factually true. Like, I'm sorry, like, there have been studies. Out of 1,000, if you took a woman throwing a baseball, and then 1,000 men throwing a baseball, the woman will throw faster. Then out of those 1,000 men, this is in the book The Sports Gene, the woman will throw faster than 2 of those men out of 1,000. And we're not talking about like Goose Gossage here. We're talking about like
regular humans.
We're talking about the accountant from down the block. We're talking about Paul Ryan flinging a baseball.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's not the way this stuff works.
Well, that was the counter that Fallon Fox used, was that she actually lost to a woman. She lost to a woman named Ashley Evans Smith. But what I said was, no, this proves my point, is that you're not good. You're
Right.
just a man.
Well, this was, you know, John McEnroe got slapped all over the lot when he said about Serena Williams. She's
Right.
great. Serena Williams is great and all. But if Serena Williams were he said she's the best female player ever. And they were like, well, why not just the best player ever? And he's like, because she's a woman. Like, if she were a man, she'd get her ass kicked. And everyone was like, no, how dare you?
Right.
There is something called the Universal Tennis Ranking. She would rank in the mid-ranks of college male players if she were a man. And Serena Williams said like 5 years ago, no, I never want to play with like Andy Roddick. He'd kill me. She actually did this. There was a 200th ranked man in the world who she wanted to just warm up with. And they played a normal match for, he won 6-1, 6-0. Right? And he was like ranked 200th in the world. And the only shock was that he dropped a point to her.
Well, there was the issue of Renee Richards, when Renee Richards started playing tennis against women and kicking their ass. And he was a middling player at
Right.
best as a woman, or as a man rather. But as a woman, he was a fucking killer.
Hey, I mean, this is what should insult feminists. It turns out that Caitlyn Jenner won all these Hero of the Year awards and everything. We men are so great that even when we decide to be women, we're better than women.
That was the most bizarre thing. He'd only been a woman for 6 months.
But he's
and he
amazing
won
at
Woman of
it.
the
He's
Year.
incredible at it. He was a natural.
He's a gold
It turns out
medalist
that
as
men
a
are better
woman.
even at being women than women. No wonder feminists are pissed, and they should be. And this whole glossing over the difference between feminists who have been claiming that women are distinct from men and important and different and better in certain ways. Like, I don't understand how you hold these two simultaneous thoughts. Hillary Clinton needs to be president because we need a female president. But also, Donald Trump, if he said he was a woman tomorrow, would be a woman. How do you hold those two simultaneous thoughts? I always thought that in the last week of the election, if Trump thought he was going to lose, he should have just declared himself a woman, and then he too could have run as the first female
That would've
president.
been amazing if
That would
he
have been
did
incredible
it.
trolling.
If he showed up with a dress and
Oh man,
lipstick.
and the entire
I
left. could have
identify as a woman. I'm the best looking woman ever. I've been voted as the best looking woman of all time.
Melania's
One
got a
of
lesbian.
the great arguments that I got in online, when it wasn't even arguments, but so many people were calling me a bigot because of this Fallon Fox thing. It was stunning because it was so confusing to me. I'm like, I'm talking about defending a biological woman. Like, these biological women, at least 2 of them, got the fuck beaten out of them by Fallon Fox before they found out that she used to be a man. I'm like, that's not an issue to these people? And so this one woman said, she's always been a woman. And I said, okay, she gave birth, she impregnated a woman and got her pregnant. I go, what about then? She goes, even then.
Yeah.
So even then, she was a woman. She was a woman when she was fucking a woman with her dick and getting that woman pregnant. Like, we are in fantasy land.
Yeah, it's crazy towns out there.
This doesn't mean, this is what's crazy. Like, you can't, just because something's illogical, you can't just decide that someone's a bigot. Like, we're in a weird area. We're talking about bone structure, and here's the crazy
Muscle
thing.
density.
Here's the crazy thing, is that they always rely on these gender reassignment doctors to define the...
Ryan.
Hey, I'm not sure why I called you actually. So I have a quad like I mean, I don't want to call you, but what I meant is I could have texted it, but I have a quad like photo.
Oh yeah, we should all.
Alright, so I'm going to Maine, right? Not now, but like in July.
Yeah.
In like early-ish July. For
Plot
like
twist:
April.
Mills knew you were going to Maine during that time and is
Yeah.
going at the same time, and you'll somehow end up in the same Airbnb as
No, I
him.
think that like he's going at like a different time.
I don't remember when he's. No, it's in July actually. He's going.
No,
Yeah.
no, I'm saying, but not at the same date I'm going though.
Oh yeah. What were you
I
saying?
don't know.
Yeah.
But so the thing is that my parents like to go to a gay part of Maine, and it's full of faggots, right?
Yeah.
No,
That's
no,
where
no.
I'm going to a gay part of Massachusetts right now.
Oh, peace out, yeah.
Yeah.
So the thing is that it's like boring as hell because they're all old and or gay, and I don't like. I mean, and I don't dislike older gay people. It's just not that fun.
Yeah.
Because they're like gay bar, and then that's like the like hooded spot, but I'm not going there because I'm
Yeah.
Because they're gonna think I'm gay, and rightfully so. Because I mean, I don't blame them. But
And then they'll instantly fuck.
Yeah. So the thing is that my brother, I think he's going too, but he's kind of boring. So the thing is that he likes to drink every now and then, but
Yeah.
his ID is expired, so it's like a question of if he'll get served or not,
Yeah.
So the thing is that whether or not he does, do you want to go for like a day or two and like maybe or like meet me there or something?
What, it would depend on when it is, because late July, I'm going to, wait, is it July? Or late August, I think. Oh, late July, I'm going to California for like a week, and, there's 2 other weekends I'm busy in July, but then the rest of the time in the weekdays I'm free. Weekdays and weekends.
I'm going July 4th or 5th.
Oh, that one?
But
That one, I'm gonna be in the Cape during that time with all my cousins and everything.
well, no, but the thing is that I'm not sure if no, I mean, wait, are you like, what are you leaving here? Because I'm not going for that weekend. I'm going like because 4th of July on Sunday.
Yeah, like meaning I'm gonna be like that whole 4th of July weekend in Cape Cod with relatives.
But like when do you get back though?
Oh, I get back on that Sunday, yeah.
Yeah, because I'm going on a Sunday, so if you came on like the Monday or Tuesday, then like that could work potentially.
Oh yeah, then that should be fine.
But like the thing is that I don't know like what my birthday is like, so it's like I don't want to like. Yeah, so I mean maybe like I'm not really fully sure honestly.
Yeah. I could
mean,
even
like-
bring like an air mattress or something.
But the thing is that it's like I don't know like.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so basically, I'm not sure what I'm even getting at, but like, if you want to, maybe for like one night or day, because like, I don't know if you want to go out and get lit or whatever, but
I'd be down to join if it's not like days that I'm at the Cape.
the thing is that, so it's like, yeah, like I said, I don't know if you'll get served alcohol, because like last year you did, because I think that vacation spots are like looser on like expired ID, and it was COVID, so like you couldn't get it like updated as easily.
Yeah.
So sometimes they let us slide, but I don't know this time for sure. Maybe it'll work.
Yeah.
But so basically, like you could potentially, because it's him. He's like, the whole autism thing is that he can't like talk to anyone that he hasn't known for like 15 years plus.
Yeah.
So it's like I don't know, like you could potentially come with us, like if I like got him like comfortable with it, or we could just go alone for one day, and then I could do something with him for a day.
Yeah, sounds good. I'm down.
So I'll keep it. So keep it in mind if you want to, because I don't know. Like, I didn't know, honestly.
Yeah, remind me, cause if it's like, yeah, like on like that Monday or Tuesday or whatever, then I can easily do it.
Yeah, but I don't like know for sure because like again, like I mean, I'll ask. Oh, you want like John can maybe come with us for like a day? I feel like he like might be okay with it, but like might not. I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
And like, it's not you. It's just he's just weird.
So weird. Yeah. One thing we should do at some point, I was telling the Polish girls this, is that we should go to, what's it called? Canopy Lake Park and or Water Country.
Yeah, for sure.
That would be lit. Even a simple water park.
Yeah, no, we should, but like for sure.
Yeah, and then we could
Yeah,
even.
so I'll like figure it out though for sure. Okay, like.
Yeah, let me know the deets.
Cause like, yeah, I don't know, like cause like, even if he does go out, like you could come with me for like, we could just like go, like you could use one of your substances, I could get like drunk.
We could get lit.
There's a few bars that are open like till 11:30, which is late for the area.
For Maine. Yeah.
I don't know why they like going there for. It's so boring. It's just like it's not really like I don't know, but they're old, so like.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah.
Yeah, oh my god, yeah. Yeah, I'm down.
So keep it like potentially maybe in mind because
Maybe.
but there also might be even like a club like 50 towns away that we could like Uber to or get a ride to or something.
Or I wonder if there's even like any free concerts or stuff like that, or cheap ones.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean like I think that you might like to go to like a outdoor or even indoor bar with us and then we just like talk or whatever.
Yeah.
But again, you know, it's like you can't like get him to do anything, so it's like if he says yes, it'll have to be on his terms.
Yeah.
Because but yeah, anyway, alright, yeah, so just keep it in mind.
Oh yeah.
That's like a maybe thing.
Maybe.
Alright, yeah.
Thing.
Alright, we'll take care.
Oh yeah. And don't forget to say food or ice cream or something place in the chat.
What?
Don't forget to say food or ice cream place in the chat.
Yeah. No, I won't.
Oh yeah. And then we could all.
Yeah.
And then we could even.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And it's really interesting because I got deep into the rabbit hole with this because I was really shocked at how many people were angry at me.
Yeah.
And there's one doctor who is a board-certified endocrinologist who sort of broke it down. She's like, not only is the science behind this crazy, but when you have gender reassignment surgery, one of the big issues with men transitioning into women is bone density.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, when you have gender reassignment surgery, you're taking
Watch out, object on road ahead.
estrogen, which actually preserves bone density. She's like, not only do they have less bone density once they become a woman, they might have more.
Whoa.
Because you're preserving it.
Mhm.
Like you're not going to automatically be just like a woman in a year or so.
I don't think surgeons, I mean, I know too much about doctoring from having spent 1,000 years with my wife's medical education to believe that doctors have the capacity to magically change a man into a woman. No.
Maybe it's going to happen one day with like CRISPR or something like that when they start using, genetic,
I mean,
literally genetic
before
editing.
birth, maybe. I mean, if you actually edit the chromosomes before birth, but no. I mean, like, no. If once your genes have been defined, once your chromosomes have been defined, like, this is 5th grade science, people. It's 5th grade science.
What scares the shit out of me is when you hear these stories about people deciding that their child, who's like 8 or 9
This
years
is
old,
effed up beyond belief.
it's scary because you can't, like a 9-year-old, like a fucking 17-year-old does not. That was the thing about the Ruby Rose girl. She was saying that when she was young, when she was a teenager, she wanted to be a man. She wanted to be transgender, and that she had gone through that phase. And now she's so happy that she didn't do anything.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
they say that 80% of kids who experience any sort of gender dysphoria as children grow out of it. So when you have a society that reinforces it, and then in Canada they're passing laws now that say that if a kid says, you have a girl, and the girl says I'm a boy, and she's 3, that the government can come into your house and take the kid, because obviously if you don't want to humor the kid and get the kid treatment or surgery or hormone blockers, then you're obviously doing something wrong to the kid. This is just, it's insane. First of all, if anyone tried to do that with my kid, I would meet them at the door with a gun. I mean, this is the kind of stuff where you're talking legit civil war. Like when you say that the government can take people's kids from them because the government knows better than you how to parent your kids on basic things like, are you a boy or a girl? That's going to get violent pretty quickly. If you send someone to my door with a gun saying, I'm taking your daughter from you because your daughter says she's a boy at school, and you're not going to take her to a psychiatrist to start her transitioning process,
Oh.
no.
But
No.
how did we get so far down this rabbit hole of insanity? And this is not taking away the personal choice of a 60-year-old man like Bruce Jenner who decides
Right.
he wants to be a woman.
Do what you want. Free country.
Go have at it. Have a good time. But how did we get so crazy that that becomes an option, that people they're not paying attention to the massive variables that a child encounters? Psychological variables, stress variables, what's going on in the home, what's happening hormonally, what's happening psychologically, what is happening to you, and how can you decide, like, this is it? You're going to allow this kid to make a lockdown decision to begin gender transition surgery at like 9 or 10 years
Yeah, you
old.
can put hormone blockers in there to an 8-year-old.
Yeah, and and then they'll show you like this girl who's like 13, who used to be a boy, and you see her act and talk, and they go, how could you imagine that this isn't a girl? Okay, I don't know. I just don't know what happened.
I'm going to go with the fact that there's a Y chromosome in every cell of that person's body, except, ironically, for some of his sperm cells to tell me that that's probably a boy. And yes, you can block the manifestation of some physical characteristics. That does not change the chromosomes. And there are legitimately intersex people, right? I mean, there are people
Right.
who legitimately have conditions like Klinefelter syndrome. I mean,
Right.
they're like these are actual biological things. But if you're telling me any boy can be a girl, no. No. The answer is no. And that's not biologically correct, and you're not doing any sort of service to a child, especially evidenceless. I mean, you're doing no service to a child by humoring what is obviously a mental condition. And a mental condition, by the way, again, linked 40% lifetime suicide rate is higher than any other population on planet Earth by a whopping margin. I mean, telling kids that we are going to force you into like you express when you're 5 that you think you're the opposite sex, and now at 8 we're going to transition you into this, and your suicide rate is exactly the same as somebody who didn't do that, right? Or it's very similar to somebody who didn't do that, and like this is somehow supposed to benefit the person. It's just it's beyond imagination. I think it's cruelty.
Well, it's very strange, for sure. And as someone who doesn't experience gender dysphoria, I like to. I mean, when someone's got some sort of an issue, whatever it is, whether
Yeah.
you call it an issue or a condition or whatever the fuck it is, and I don't have it, I try to be as standoffish. I try to be as objective. I try to be as kind as possible. This is a weird one, though. This is a weird one because it's become some sort of a fad, and any criticism of it whatsoever, even discussion of it, you are labeled as a transphobic piece of shit.
Yeah, I think it's only weird, honestly, because it's run into the weird sexual politics that dominates in the country.
Right.
Because if we were to talk about anorexia, which is a form of body dysphoria,
Yes.
all right, or if we were to talk about, I mean, there actually is something body identity integrity disorder, right, where people like want to lose an arm. Like we would be saying, well, the problem is in your brain, it's not in your arm.
Right.
Like chopping off your arm seems a little extreme, but if you want to do that, like go ahead. But if you were a kid and it's in 5-year-old, you wouldn't say, oh well, this kid's going to suffer with this their entire life. Like let's just chop off their arm now. Or let's
Right.
prevent their arm from developing. Like this is not. And to tell the entire society that this is a positive good is a whole other thing. It's one thing to try and treat people who have a disorder humanely. It's another thing to redefine the terms of the entire civilization as well as biology in order to fit that. It's valuing the subjective over the objective. Science is objective. Your feelings about who you are is subjective. You can have those feelings, but once you are trying to translate those feelings into the objective standard we all must hold by, now you're encroaching on my territory. It's not just you doing what you want to do anymore. You're telling me what I have to do. That's a different thing.
Right. Now, when people say that there's this 40% suicide rate amongst transgender people, one of the arguments that I've heard is it's because they're not accepted.
Right. I've heard this too. Yeah.
Yeah, and that if they were accepted and then they felt themselves and they felt loved for their true self, then it would be just like everybody else.
And
But there's-
I've seen no evidence to suggest that. If there is a decrease based on treatment, then it's marginal at best.
But that dysphoria, is it uniform? Like, I would like to know, like, is like gender dysphoria, is it in a similar percentile as anorexia, or what bodybuilders get, or what strippers get when they get triple F tits?
I don't know.
there's a
I'd
lot
have
of,
to look up like the anorexic suicide rate.
Body dysphoria is a weird thing.
It is.
I've met people. There's a girl that goes to my yoga class that's anorexic, and it's so disturbing. It's
Yeah,
so
it's-
sad.
It's horrifying. It's horrifying. And listen, I'm not saying that we should mistreat people, but if again you're talking about an entire society
Mhm.
being forced to redefine basic biological terminology,
Right.
then like be an adult. Like live with this. I'm happy
Yeah.
to treat you with. Listen, I would hire a transgender person, but I'm not going to change what reality is in order to humor you. Like if you call yourself Napoleon, I'm not going to call you Napoleon. You're not Napoleon. Like this is not something I'm up for.
Would you take it into consideration, though? I mean, when you were looking at this, like, what if someone was really good at their job and someone else was equally good at their job but not transgender? Would you lean towards the not transgender person because you say, well, the transgender person, they're dealing with a host of psychological issues, obviously?
Well, I mean, I think that you would have to think about, typical aspects of reliability, just the same way you would with any other mental disorder. If you knew somebody was manic depressive, which is super common, and you have somebody who's equally qualified who's not manic depressive, you might think, well, that might have an effect on how they do their job.
Yeah.
So maybe. I mean, I haven't had enough personal experience with transgender people to know whether it would impact a secretarial job or something. Probably not.
Yeah.
Probably not. But again, to pretend that like transgenders in the military, this seems to me like a decision that should be made by military people who
Right.
actually have to determine how much does this impact the job. And if you already have a group of people with a 40% suicide rate who have higher levels of instability as a group, not individually, as a group, and you're choosing which groups to pick from to be on the front lines in small units, living under severe pressure for months at a time,
Yeah.
like is that what you're going to go for, or is that something where like you'd have to overcome certain presumptions in order to get there?
Yeah, I tweeted something that Kristen Beck wrote the other day about when the military ban, when Trump, apparently there was not a real ban.
No, it's bullshit. I mean, basically,
Trump just
Trump was
said
trying to
something.
distract from the Sessions thing.
Is that what it is?
Yeah. 2 minutes later, he was back to tweeting about Sessions. This was the part about that I didn't like. Like, I actually agree that there is a question as to whether the military should be recruiting transgender people, because I think that the military has certain, like, it creates a bunch of questions. Not just questions about who showers with whom, but also questions like, okay, you have a transgender man. Does he have to fulfill the female standards of fitness or the male standards of fitness?
Right.
Like, these are actual questions.
Yeah.
How does it work with troop cohesion? Right? You
Yeah.
have a group of men, and then you have a man who's technically a man, but do you treat him as a woman? Like, does he have to carry the same amount of stuff as the guy? Like, how does that work exactly?
Right.
Does the cost of gender transition surgery and hormones and psychologists, like, does that come into play at all here? Would you recruit from the anorexic community for the military? Like, these are like real questions. But that said, that's why they commissioned a study from General Mattis at Department of Defense. He was going to look into all of this and then give a report in 6 months, and Trump just sort of tweeted it out there. I agree that I think that Trump's general attitude on it is probably correct in terms of what the military is there to do and what it's not there to do. But what I don't agree with is how he did it at all. Because it's disrespectful to the people in the military who are transgender. I mean, like, I wouldn't want to find out in a tweet. I want a better rationale than 2 tweets and then we're back to, like, look, they're doing more than I mean, they're serving the military. I didn't serve in the military. It seems like it would be pretty hypocritical of me to say, well, it's perfectly respectful to say in 2 tweets you're out, because that's the way it is, without any sort of supporting argumentation. And he didn't actually implement a policy. He didn't give the policy to the Defense Department so they could even implement it. The Pentagon says they're not implementing it because they don't have a policy. So it's a PR thing.
So it's a weird PR thing, but it really stirred up people in the
Which
comment
was, I think, was
section.
designed to do, right?
I'm sure. Well, either that or he just felt like tweeting.
I think that's what it was. I mean, he wanted to shift the conversation. And the funniest thing about that is that he did it in 2 tweets. And the first half of the tweet was, in consultation with my generals and my military experts, we have decided that we will no longer accept ellipses, 10-minute gap, transgender people in the military. So there was a story at BuzzFeed that was kind of funny. They went and interviewed a bunch of people in the Pentagon, and a bunch of the people in the Pentagon were like, during that 10-minute gap, I didn't know whether we were going to nuclear war or what, right? Because that first tweet was like, we will no longer accept. It could have been
North Korea's
missile,
Yeah.
missile test program.
Right.
So,
Wow.
yeah, this again is evidence. I think it's an example of, even if I think the policy is good policy done the wrong way is actually counterproductive for the policies that I want to see done. Like, I want it laid out by Mattis. I want it laid out by Defense Department. I want all the reasons laid out so we can have a good discussion over it. I don't really want just like thought vomit on Twitter. That's just not. I don't think it's effective.
Well, it also seems that this issue is such a hot issue, and it's also an issue that you're not really allowed to have an opinion on, other than the standard opinion. This has
Everything's
always been a
great,
woman trapped
yeah.
in a man's body, and this is the way it is. And
By the way, this
it's totally healthy.
Descartes notion that it's like a man, that it's like the soul in the machine, and there's a woman deep down for 40 years who had 3 children with a man's penis, and now is escaping. There's a Ghostbusters. Like, again,
Ghostbusters.
it's just.
Have you seen the man in England? Was it in England? No, it was Germany. The man that identifies as a 6-year-old girl.
Yes.
And so they turned him into a 6-year-old girl.
So there's
and
this
wore
clip.
pigtails.
Yeah, exactly. There's that clip of me that's gone around the internet a fair bit where I'm talking to a college girl about this, and she's saying like men can be women, women can be men. And I said, well, how old are you?
I love that clip.
I mean, come on.
Why aren't you 60?
Why aren't you 60?
Yeah. And she's like baffled, like what?
And then it finally hits her, and it's like, well, you know.
Yeah.
So I think this is what's kind of frightening about the age we live in, is that we can't even come up with common definitions of basic things. How are we supposed to have conversations with each other if you can't decide what a man is or what a woman is, or whether a scientific fact ought to be relevant or not?
Yeah.
And at least we could decide what was a scientific fact or not before, and now it's like the subjective has just eaten everything. If I don't think it's a scientific fact, it's no longer a scientific fact. And
Well,
therefore
we've
I no
changed
longer
the
accept it.
parameters of the argument. It's become about freedom. The freedom to be your authentic self versus biology.
And right, and again, be your authentic self. I don't give a shit. Do whatever you want. Like,
Yeah.
more power to you. But it is no longer about your freedom to be your authentic self when you're talking about either legislation that impacts how I run my business or how I raise my child, or you're suggesting that it is my duty to humor your authentic self. Like, I think there are a lot of people who do stupid crap their entire lives. It's not my job to humor their authentic self. I mean, I'm pro-drug legalization, but I've never done drugs, and I think that drugs are stupid. Don't tell me that I have to, like, cheer when somebody smokes a joint. Like, do what you want, but don't tell me that I have to redefine what I think is good and bad behavior. Like, that's silly.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. And the other thing that it became this weird political hot point where we were talking about bathrooms.
Yeah.
That it become like the number one
Because
topic.
it was easy for people to sort of boil down
Right.
the argument into that, I think.
Right, of course. Like this, what about my children? My children are going to the bathroom. A man with a dress is going to come in. He's going to claim that he's identifying as a woman. And it got to the point where so many people were upset about it that people were boycotting South Carolina. Remember that?
Oh yeah, you know, and this the one I thought was amazing was the NCAA saying they were going to remove the Final Four from North Carolina because they passed the bathroom bill right in North Carolina. And I asked online, okay, so when are you going to abolish the separate male and female divisions of the NCAA? Like, I mean, you said that we can't
Right.
have separate male and female bathrooms where biological males play and, you know, where biological males go to one bathroom and biological females go to another. So why do you have separate divisions? Why do you have an NCAA women's division and an NCAA men's division?
Yeah, where does this go?
I mean,
Where-
eventually,
How does this boil down?
eventually it goes to one place or another. Like, either we just say, this is a step too far, give me a break. You know,
We pull
science
back.
says no. Or we say, anyone can be anything at any time. A man is a woman and a woman is a man, and, you know, and just pick.
Have you
know?
ever seen any of the videos of people that are gender fluid?
I have seen those videos.
Those videos are fascinating. They wake up one day and they're a woman, and the next day they're a man. And there was a guy on NPR, on Radio Lab, on a podcast, who transitions at times of stress.
Makes perfect sense to me.
In the middle of having a conversation, I just switched.
But-
I'm Paul now. I'm a man now.
So when he's more stressed, does he switch into a woman? Because that'd be really sexist, right? I mean, I think that like if you stressed at work and he switched into a woman and started crying, it seems kind of sexist to me. That's implying that women are the people who cry at work. So
That is sexist.
also this raises a bunch of other weird questions. Like, okay, if you're like, there's been this, again, you want to talk about weird? There's been this weird push in parts of the trans community to suggest that a male who doesn't want to have sex with a biological male who says he's a female is now a sexist against women.
Transphobe.
Is a transphobe, right? You're a
Yes.
bad person if you're a man who doesn't want to have sex with a man, a biological man. And it doesn't make you gay to do that, right? If you have
Right.
sex with a biological man who says he's a woman, that's straight sex. But if you were to have sex with a biological woman who says she's a man, you're gay.
Yeah.
Kinda weird.
It
Kinda
is
weird.
definitely weird, but I have seen the arguments and the blog posts and the tweets about men who discriminate against trans women, who do
Right.
not want to date trans women.
And people keep saying, well, it's cultural.
Police reported ahead.
No, that's called evolution.
Well, you
Right.
can have a baby together.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. It turns out that evolution wants men to have sex with women. Like, I'm sorry to break it to everybody, but evolution relies on human reproduction. Okay? If you put that thing in the wrong place, it ain't gonna reproduce. Like, that's just sorry. I mean, like, I don't know why I have to keep apologizing for science. And then they say that my party is the party of non-science. Like, what? Like, you're the ones who say that 2 minutes before my baby is born, it's not a baby, and a man can be a woman. But I'm anti-science. I'm wildly confused by this.
Well, the whole thing is wildly confusing. But it's such a strange subject. It's such a strange subject that's been brought to the forefront.
Again, I think it's about more the moral posturing than it is about people who actually think this is a major issue.
I think you're absolutely right, and I think people love to be virtuous. They love to be on that side. They love to virtue signal.
How dare you?
Yeah, how
It
dare
is the
you.
how dare you routine.
It's
Yeah.
the how dare you with dicks. Or lack of fake dicks. But they don't really have a lot of fake dicks. They don't really go that far. They just sort of take testosterone and see what's up. But it's just, it's a weird facet of our society today that is unexpected. I mean, you go back 20, 30 years and it was an oddity. And, you know, even during the Renee Richards thing, it was more of an oddity than anything.
I think
People just sort of
this,
accepted
well,
it.
this is why I say I think that a lot of people who are virtue signaling are still treating it as an oddity. They just won't admit that.
Right.
I think that they're watching it because it's a circus to them, and I think that's actually cruel. I don't think that you should like put people who suffer from mental illness on the cover of magazines. I just don't. I think that that's bad strategy.
What about bodybuilders?
I mean, I don't know that. I'll be honest with you. I don't know that much about bodybuilding. I mean,
Well,
do
they are-
I look like I know that much about bodybuilding?
No, but the argument that I've heard
I'm a
is
CrossFit
that
guy. I'm ripped but small. That's
I'm more of a marathon runner. What I've heard, the argument about bodybuilders is that they suffer from it as well, is that in order to get that big, you almost have to have some sort of a body dysmorphia.
Mhm.
You have to not understand how insanely huge you are,
yeah, I
or
mean,
be really into it. Their argument is they're really into it, and which makes sense to me. But I've heard people say that it's like almost like a reverse anorexia. Like
Mhm.
they never feel like they're big enough.
yeah, I've seen that. People say
Yeah.
that before, yeah.
Well, it's weird that the human mind is suspect, or subject.
It's really
rather, to
variable, and
these-
it's
yeah.
really open to suggestion. Really open to
Really.
suggestion. I mean,
Which
you
is
see
what
that with-
scares people about children transitioning.
For sure, for sure. I mean, listen, you see it in everything, including fashion. Like, how many dudes wax their chest now? 30 years ago, nobody waxed their chest.
So they're waxing? Dudes are waxing?
They
Jamie, I
shave
turned
their
to
chest,
you.
wax their chest,
Whenever
whatever
I
it
have
is.
questions about the youth, I turn to young Jamie.
Yeah, but I mean, you watch TV now, and every
Yeah.
dude on TV has a chest as bare as my,
Yeah.
14-month-old son's.
I hear you.
And it's like, where did this come from? And this
They
came
want
from
to
TV.
look ripped. They want to look chiseled.
And it also came from TV. I mean,
Right.
it was like TV. It was going to be men are going to be hairless now. This is the new trend. Men are going to be hairless. Right? You don't even get the Burt Reynolds like,
Yeah.
bare chest anymore. And so if people are susceptible to even that with regard to fashion, like people have for 5 years people convinced themselves.
Police reported ahead.
skinny jeans were a thing. Like
Yeah.
people are open to virtually any sort of suggestion.
Bell bottoms. They come in, they come out. Remember when they tried to bring bell bottoms back
I
a few
did
years
remember
ago?
Not a good call.
They tried. And people were like, nah, not this one. Platforms, when they used to wear platform shoes,
That's why I'm just keeping around all my dad's old clothes, because eventually they're going to come back in again.
you never know. Yeah, the idea of fashion and culture also being like the same sort of mechanism that allows people to be variable when it comes to their gender. That's
I mean, you actually see there's a study, I thought this was fascinating, there was a study in Britain, or a poll in Britain, about sexual orientation. And what it found was 95% of people over the age of 60 identified as exclusively heterosexual. Of people who are under the age of 30, only 42% identified as exclusively heterosexual. And it's like, okay, well, in 2 generations, it's not that half the population became bisexual, right? That is not a scientific thing. That means that people are open to suggestion about their sexual behavior, which you would assume. Right? So assuming that culture has no impact, and this goes against the whole born this way aspect of even the homosexual rights movement, the gay rights movement, that says, oh, you were born this way. Like, I agree that there's a genetic component to sexual behavior, but the idea that that's why 50% of the UK population has shifted toward, I'm open to anything. Culture has
is it
something.
50%?
As I say, 95% of people over the age of 60, and then 42% of people under the age of 30.
Wow.
So that's
42%
say they're
bisexual
exclusively
in the UK?
no 42% people say they're
UK?
extremely heterosexual.
Extremely 40.
Say
okay.
exclusively heterosexual. So 60%, nearly 60%, 58% say that they're on the spectrum but not exclusively heterosexual.
That's fascinating. I wonder if they only talk to women who are drunk. Like young drunk girls, they get crazy.
Like,
but I think also it's like they're trying to
it's an
impress
Adam
people.
Carolla thing, right? Where Adam has a whole shtick about like in the future there's going to be a point where guys are considered gay if they won't kiss another dude. Like, what are you gay? You afraid that you're gay? Kiss another dude and show me you're not gay. We've gone around the bend a little bit.
We have. Well, there's also this thing that I think happens when you have 2 very clear sides. Where you have teams and you sort of have a line in the sand that you're not supposed to cross, and there's the right side and there's the left side. And we have that in this country. We really don't have a third party option.
No.
Like, all our third parties are kind of a joke. And whenever you have 2 opposing viewpoints, people dig in. Have you seen this new documentary about William F. Buckley and Gore Vidal and the debates
No,
they
I've heard
had?
about it. Is it any good?
It's great. It's really interesting. Debates they had during the 1968 election. It's fascinating.
I mean, I've watched some of those debates, but yeah.
It's intense.
Yeah, particularly the one where Buckley threatens to punch Vidal. That was
Yeah,
pretty
he calls him
spectacular.
queer and says, "I'll sock you in the face and you'll stay plastered."
You'll stay
Like,
plastered.
It's weird because it's so
Stay plastic.
Yeah.
It's spectacular.
And it's such a it's so in the speak of the day, like
He's got
1968.
the Brahmin accent.
Yeah.
It's great. Like, it's almost British accent. Yeah, it's fantastic.
It's really interesting. And then, but these, I mean, it's that thing. This my team versus that team. And I think the left is guilty of it as much as the right is guilty of it. It seems like it's a real issue where there's a lot of people that have ideas and opinions that sort of cross party lines, but they vote on one side or another and they vote for their team.
I think that's right. I think that, especially in this last election, I think that was true. I think that people felt so alienated by the other side. Like, to understand a lot of people who voted Trump, you have to understand that there are a lot of people in the country who felt insulted by the left. They were just sick of being called racist, sexist, bigot, homophobes every time someone wanted to advance a policy on the left. And so they said, okay, screw that. At least Trump's not calling me that.
Right.
So I'll do that. And then there are a bunch of people on the left who now feel insulted by Trump's even presence, and they think all the people who voted for Trump are those people, and so they're fighting racism, sexism, bigotry, and homophobia by voting against Trump. Again, I think we go back to this, and there's a hardening of there's not one bubble in the country, there's 2. The right likes to accuse the left of being in a bubble in the coast. There's a bubble on the right too, which is the idea that everybody every piece of the media is lying to you. Right? The New York Times is always fake news. Everything is fake news. You don't like it, it's fake news. And these bubbles are not healthy for the Republic. I mean, we can't have conversations with each other if we do this routine.
No, deception is not healthy across the board. And there's another thing that's going on where everybody's a Nazi. Like, I've never heard people called a Nazi more than I have over the last 6 months. I mean, it's been crazy. If you support Trump, you're a Nazi. You're a neo-Nazi. You're somehow or another, you're a fascist. If you didn't vote for Hillary, you're a Nazi. Like, some people have boiled it down to, like, the purest form.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, first of all, it demonstrates tremendous historical ignorance. Forget the Holocaust. Like, you just look at who Hitler was and the policies he promulgated. Like, he was basically, he was all over the place. When he wanted to talk to socialists, he was a socialist. When he wanted to talk to capitalists, he was a capitalist. He was a top-down government guy for sure, but he would speak the language of what would be considered the European far right today on a lot of issues. But then he would talk about redistribution of resources and universal health care and all this kind of stuff and guns. But he's just a convenient club. I mean, it's just a convenient club because then. And this is the part that scares me. Once you say that somebody is Hitler, then it actually becomes obligatory to physically resist them. Then you can't have a conversation with Hitler, right? Like once you say somebody's Hitler or the KKK, what are you going to do? Have a conversation with them? At the very least, you won't talk with them, and at the most, you might try to punch them.
That is really a problem with the nomenclature, right? That's really a problem with identifying someone in that way. that they are someone that you have to resist, and they are someone who cannot be reasoned with. They are someone who is absolutely evil. There's no like variables or variance in their behavior.
And listen, I like fiery political rhetoric. I find it fun. But I think once you label somebody, completely evil, you have a responsibility not to debate with them. You have a responsibility not to talk with them. Even the conversation legitimizes them.
Yeah.
I mean, like, listen, I'm sure you're going to get a bunch of shit from people for even having me on, because the idea is going to be, well, how could you have on somebody like Shapiro? You're legitimizing his point of view by having him on. I know a lot of people who I politically disagree with who've had that experience. They'll have me on their show, and it's like, how dare you have Shapiro on? Because you're just granting him cover. Or we can just have a conversation, and maybe we'll disagree, maybe we'll agree.
Yeah, I really don't give a fuck about those people. I think that's a silly conversation. I feel like you should talk to everybody. And if you disagree or agree, I have friends on that. I like my friend yesterday on Eddie Bravo. He believes in everything's a fucking conspiracy. I disagree with him wildly, and I love him like a brother. I don't think you have to agree with people, and I don't think you have to... the idea that you can't just have a conversation with someone about something and see if you can find middle ground, or see if you could clearly define their point of view or find their perspective, that's missing today in a weird way. And one of the weirdest things about the election was the ping pong match between the left and the right as played out on national television by the media. I would watch, especially cable news, I would watch Fox News and then go to CNN and go back and forth, flip channels. You have that previous channel button on the DirecTV? I would just put it on both of them and go, what's really happening?
It's two different worlds. My mom said this in 2012 with Romney and Obama. If you read the right-wing media, there was no way Romney was going to lose. Right. And if you read the left-wing media, there was no way Romney was going to win. And she said, which one of these do I believe in? I said, it's probably somewhere in the middle. Like, I have a basic rule, which is that if you have a New York Times report and then you have a report from my site, the Daily Wire, and they share the facts, you can probably assume the facts are true. But the opinions that are, embedded with the facts, those are opinions.
Right.
And that's what's so hard about, I think, the modern media landscape, is trying to separate the facts from the opinion. And so this is why when Trump says fake news, he's not wrong that CNN hates him and the New York Times hates him. That he's right about that. But just labeling it all fake news is inaccurate also, because most of what they're reporting is true. Right? It's just that it's biased. Something can be both true and biased.
Yes.
Right? I'm true and biased. Right? I say things that I think are factual, but I'm obviously conservative. That's my point of view. Tough shit. So that's...
And you're a commentator. I mean, that's what you do. I mean, half of it is, riling people up, saying provocative things. I mean, that's...
This is where I think the right is correct about CNN and the New York Times and some of the other networks. Like, if you ask the right, what pisses you off more, CNN or the MSNBC? Most people on the right will say CNN, not MSNBC. Because MSNBC is honest enough to say we're on the left, and CNN pretends we have no bias. We're above all that. Same thing with the New York Times. We're above all that. And then they run the most egregiously biased headlines. So we go, well, if they're lying about that, they're lying about everything.
One of my most fascinating characters of this whole play was Scott Adams. And particularly because Scott Adams, when I had him on my podcast, he was saying he doesn't even vote.
Yeah.
And he was like, what I am paying attention to, he goes, I am a trained hypnotist, and I'm paying attention to the powers of persuasion, and I'm looking at trends, and I'm making some predictions that turned out to be accurate. And he's like, he's looking at Trump, and he's not talking about Trump in these glowing terms. He's talking about him as being an effective persuader. And he lost millions of dollars because of that opinion. Talking about a guy that he's not even going to vote for. And this is all leading up to the election where people were fucking furious at him.
Yeah.
And even more furious at him after Trump won, because he would do those coffee with Scott things where he does on Periscope, where he wakes up, he starts asking questions, and he's so measured and calm. And he had a podcast recently with Sam Harris where I think he was just like a little too far over the edge of apologizing for some of Trump's behavior and sort of attributing some of Trump's behavior to that you could say was incompetence and attributed to like some sort of a master plan.
This is my only quarrel with Scott, I think, is that he tends to believe that everything Trump does is 987-degree underwater, upside down, hungry hippos. Like everything is just, it's all just acts of genius, and it's 3 steps down the road. And,
instead of stumbling his way to victory.
I knew everyone involved in the campaign. Like every single person who was involved in the campaign, I knew. This was a stumble their way to victory. Like it is amazing. The minds, human beings are. We need to think. It's sort of like the Joker says in The Dark Knight. We need to think there's a plan. We always need to think there's a plan. And so if Trump won, it must be because there was some master plan that he unveiled over the course of the campaign. 3 weeks before the election, he was caught on tape saying that he wanted to grab women by the P word. No, there was no master plan.
Right.
Okay, it's just that Hillary was an awful candidate and no one liked her. Okay, the idea that Trump was like, even the idea that there was like broad national movement for Trump that wasn't there for other candidates. He won fewer votes in Wisconsin than Mitt Romney did. He won the state. And that's because no one liked Hillary. I mean, this is the untold story of the election.
Right.
This was not a referendum on Donald Trump. This was a referendum on Hillary Clinton, particularly in the heartland, and people hated her guts. Right? Barack Obama won Ohio walking away. Everyone talks about Michigan and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. Nobody talks about Ohio. Trump won Ohio walking away. One of the reasons he won Ohio walking away is because in 2012, Barack Obama really drove out the black vote. The percentage of the black vote typically in Ohio is like 10% of the general vote. In 2012, it was like 13 to 15% of the general vote, and that was the entire margin of victory for Obama in the state of Ohio. Hillary got, closer to sort of the traditional percentages, and she lost in a whopping blowout in Ohio. No one likes Hillary Clinton. And the left was so arrogant that they thought we can take the most unpopular, unlikable, unqualified, nasty, boring human being anyone has seen for 20 years, and we'll run her. She's the one we'll run.
But
Do you understand how incompetent you have to how incompetent you have to be to lose to a celebrity game show host? like you have to suck at this in a royal manner.
Right, well, I don't know now. Now that I think the floodgates are open. But don't you think
Senator
that
Kid Rock, man.
Yeah, Kid
Let's
Rock
do
is
this
gonna
thing.
win. Apparently, he's like way ahead.
Well, no, so he's gonna win the primary. If he didn't win the primary, then he would have to run as an independent. Then he'd be indie rock, right?
Kid Rock is gonna win the primary. Oh,
Well, we can only
It's
hope that
wonderful.
once he's in the office, he grows into it and he becomes adult rock.
how has Ted Nugent not run for office yet? That's what I want to know. How's he
Uh,
not? You know, I
Nugent-
saw
Nugent
him
Rock
giving a
2020.
conversation about running for president. You know, and that if the people really wanted it, he would do it. I was like, oh, good Jesus. Oh,
I just can't wait for the Rock Oprah. You know,
The Rock might win.
the Rock might win. Hey,
Beautiful man.
if Oprah ran in 2020,
Yeah,
she.
The Rock with Oprah. It's a fucking
Dual ticket?
slam dunk.
Oh, man.
Yeah, The Rock and Oprah together.
So I have this weird idea that we should actually reinstitute a monarchy, and it should just be ceremonial, and they can be a celebrity. Right? We'll just make a celebrity monarch,
Okay.
and that person will just be there to look pretty and be
Sort of
popular.
like the Queen of England.
Exactly.
But don't really have anything
no
affect on
power.
policy.
No power,
Right.
because we keep conflating the presidency with like who actually has to do things.
Right.
With like people who want to represent the country.
Yeah, we have
And-
a popularity contest to see who gets to control the nukes, which is insane.
That's pretty wild. That's pretty wild. I think that, this is, we all think in cinematic terms now, and, Hollywood is run by the dopiest jackasses. Like, I grew up with all these people.
Right.
These are not people who you want controlling the narrative. And then we're like, you know what, let's take, if Tom Hanks would only run. What makes you think Tom Hanks would be a good president? Like, did you look at Trump and you went, God, he's doing such a brilliant job. What we really need now is the guy from Castaway.
What we need is an actor again. We did well with Reagan. We need another actor. We did great with Schwarzenegger as the governor.
Like, at least Reagan was governor for 20 years before he was the president of the United States. I mean, like,
True,
let's
right.
put him through the ringer. I mean, Schwarzenegger proved in 8 years that he was not capable of doing anything except kind of sucking.
Well, you ever heard him talk about it? From his perspective, he's like, you don't really understand how much red tape and bullshit you have to go through. He goes, I would meet with people and they would agree with me that it's a good idea. However, they would say, my voters are never going to agree with it, so I'm going to oppose it. So
Yeah.
even though I know you're right, there's a bunch of farmers that are going to be mad at me for doing that, so I'm not going to do that.
Well, this is the other thing in politics that really drives me nuts. So there are two promises that politicians make that are complete bullshit. The first promise they make is, I'm going to go to Washington, D.C., and I'm going to get things done. No, you're not. Okay, the system is built for gridlock. It's built for gridlock. It's why we have 2 separate houses of Congress. It's why we have a president who can veto. It's why we have a Supreme Court that rules on cases. It's built for gridlock. It's why we have states that are supposed to be able to check the federal government. All this is in the Federalist Papers. It was built for gridlock.
And some people are happy with that because that's how Trump is being sidelined at every time he tries to make
honestly,
something really important
I think
happen.
we all should be happy with that because the only way things were supposed to get passed was with wide public support, right? Which is probably a good thing. We don't want the government shifting wildly and veering on its axis every 4 years or every 2 years. I like the gridlock. My big problem is that the gridlock now protects a huge system that I don't like, that's been built up over 100 years in the case of growth of government. But I like the gridlock, but that's one promise that's made, and then people are disappointed. Oh, if we get in there, we're going to repeal Obamacare. It's like, no, you're not. You're not. I mean, like, you can promise it, but now you're not going to do it because you were full of crap when you said it, and now you're not going to do it. And the gridlock is there, and it's hard to change things. It takes a tremendous effort of will and electoral power to